You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
PackersTalk.com.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are diehard Packers fans, just love talking about the Pack. We're not getting into the national sports media nonsense that they waste their time with. We're sticking with real football, diving into the top topics around the Pack every week, breaking down games during the season, and now sorting through all of the draft dreams and drama of the offseason. If y'all want to support the podcast, please spike that like button for us. Most importantly, jump on over to YouTube, type in Packers Talk Network, hit that search button, find our channel, hit subscribe, do us a massive, massive favor. Every last little click on that subscribe button is just a shot to the veins. We love it. It's like your coffee in the morning. It just hits real nice. So do that for us right now. And let's talk some Pack every week. You know, let's figure out what's going on here in the offseason. Now we got a few things happening every week. We got the draft just barreling towards us. I feel like that's going to be here before we know it. And speaking of before we know it, you know, training camp will be right around the corner, and we'll be figuring out what's going on with the 2026 Packers. So first, we've got some interesting news today that maybe on the surface you didn't think was Packers news, but the more of this type of news we get, the more it becomes Packers news, because there is a specific Packer that is growing more and more relevant to this type of news. What am I talking about? JSN signs a monster deal as a receiver. Makes you wonder what is the price of Christian Watson at this point? What is that extension actually going to look like? And can it happen because of this crazy market for the receivers? And we've got a few coaching, well, I guess some formalities, right? But some announcements that maybe lead to some fascinating information about the coaches and what all that could mean. And then, of course, we got some draft prospects to break down tonight. We're looking at linebackers and safeties. So strap in if you are interested in those positions. Safety probably not as relevant to the Packers this year unless it's an individual who is good at returning and playing special teams. But the linebacker position could be interesting, you know. So definitely some on there worth talking about. So we're going to get into those. But first, of course, we got to take care of some business. We've got our show once again sponsored by Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans, as well as Bucks tickets, Brewers tickets, and Summerfest coming around the corner. Get those tickets. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. And remember, support all them local businesses, even if you're not in Wisconsin, but in Wisconsin too. Tim, how we doing, sir? How's your evening?
I'm doing good, Miles. How are you? It's kind of a quiet time for the Packers now. Free agency's mostly died down at this point. We're still a little ways off from the draft. We're kind of in that in-between period. But there's always something to talk about. And I think we can probably start off talking about the official coaching news that came out late last week. Finally. Took them long enough to announce the full coaching staff. I mean, and they still haven't made Gannon available to the media to, answer any questions, figure out what he might be running this year and any of that. But at least they announced the coaching staff, and there were some interesting nuggets that came out of that, right?
Yeah. I think the one that got the most attention was the role of DeMarcus Covington, which we were all, I think, pleased that he stuck around, right? I don't think anybody was upset about that. Yeah. But it is interesting. It's interesting when you start drawing lines, maybe in directions that you didn't expect. You know, I mean, he's not the defensive coordinator, but he is an assistant head coach now. So just kind of wonder, I wonder why, you know, what are they doing there? Is that purely maybe doing him a favor, sort of like a promotion and a sort of a pat on the back for sticking around, and outside linebacker coach? So, you know, that's not D-line.
And it's not, and I think it kind of shows, obviously, that they're going to be, when they are in base defense, and it probably won't be a ton, but they're going to be a base 3-4 defense because you now have a defensive line coach and you have Covington's move to outside linebackers coach, and teams that have an outside linebackers coach plus a linebackers coach plus a D line coach, those are 3-4 base teams. So the Packers are back to being a 3-4 base team. Again, I don't think we're going to see a ton of base anyway. Most teams don't play a ton of base anymore. It's a nickel league, and there are going to be a lot of different looks where you're going to see 4 down linemen, 3 down linemen. Well, it's going to vary, and it's not going to be a ton of snaps. But yeah, he's coaching those outside linebackers / edge rushers. So like Michael Parsons, I would assume, is more of an outside linebacker now than he is a defensive lineman. It's an interesting little change. I don't think it has a huge effect like it did. Like they were a long time 4-3 team, and then Dom Capers came in and it was a 3-4. And at that time, it was much bigger because there was still a ton of base. Like that was the majority of what you played, and that was a big difference. But now over time, everything's like so multiple, and you're playing nickel, you're playing so much sub defense that it doesn't really have a huge effect if you're 3-4 or 4-3. But it's a little bit different. You look at the players a little differently on your roster. Who you're evaluating at draft times a little bit differently is a little bit different. So it's interesting. And then the assistant head coach defense title, and Luke Getsy on offense is now the quarterbacks coach / assistant head coach offense. We got 2 assistant head coaches, one on each side. Fancy titles. Who knows what their actual responsibilities are going to be as the assistant head coaches, but it's something that Bisaccia was just the assistant head coach, and now he's gone. So I guess they're putting those roles on 2 other people now and splitting it up among offense and defense. So, it probably frees up Gannon and Stenovich to just be coordinators and do what they're doing, especially Gannon with, installing a new scheme and calling the defense and everything like that. So it kind of frees them up from things, I would imagine. It helps LaFleur in that he's got these 2 go-to people on each side of the ball. How that impacts the team, who knows, right? Ultimately, as far as having 2 assistant head coaches. But yeah, I don't think there was a whole. We kind of knew what the staff was anyway. I don't think there was a whole lot of surprise or things we didn't know once they finally announced it. But it just, the Covington role now being official, that he's an outside linebackers coach and not a D-line coach, it's different. And there are, even though we won't see a ton of base, there are going to be some differences with this defense. It is going to be different than Jeff Hafley's. I'm sure there's still going to be some things they carry over and keep and some similarities, but we're going to see differences with how they do it. And Gannon, when he was in Philly, he was a 3-4. He ran a 3-4 defense, so as his base, and that's what we're going to see now. So kind of, it's going to be interesting once they get on the field and what they run, because it was what he ran in Philly was different than what he ran in Arizona, and there were different circumstances with those 2 teams, obviously, as far as the personnel and what he had available to him. So it's probably going to be a mixture. And I like I said, I think there's going to be some things they probably want to keep from Gannon or keep from Hafley that Gannon will be able to incorporate. But just an interesting change that may affect some of the personnel as far as who they want to bring in and how they're developing guys and where they're developing guys.
Yeah. And I think this may be part of the solution that we all wanted, but didn't realize maybe that this is what it would look like. To your point, the assistant head coach before was Bisaccia. Bisaccia is gone. There was 1, now there's 2. Maybe this puts some accountability on those guys for setting the tone of accountability, right? And, to your point, Bisaccia was special teams. He's also the assistant head coach. What's he focusing on versus what are they focusing on? Maybe this simplifies things a little bit for who's focusing on what, and you actually get an attitude change and a philosophical kind of mentality change from this team, so that you're not collapsing in the 4th quarter on a regular basis and then going, oh, gee, golly, dang it, we'll get better next time. No, I mean, let's have some accountability. We don't need to go airing guys out in the press conference, but let's not just pretend like this was just sort of a swing and a miss, fellas. We'll get it next time. Like this needs to be, there needs to be like a culture of those mistakes are not acceptable. How you implement that culture is kind of, there's a million different ways you could debate it, but that's what you want a coach for. That's, like Campanelli is one that I've used as an example a lot, and we all saw the Hard Knocks videos of him, and we're all fired up because like, yeah, you want that attitude in the locker room. And that was the year that he was with the Packers was the year that Edge looked awesome. That, the linebackers looked pretty good. I think Quay was injured half that year, but he was pretty good when he was on the field, so it is up to those assistant coaches to set that tone. There's another famous example from the last Super Bowl where Kevin Green, says it is time with Clay Matthews. You want that attitude to exist in those coaches so that they can impart it on the players at the right time and in the right way. And I think you can't really articulate, or the coaches never will articulate that was the problem before, but that's what it looked like to me, right? It just looked like there was this culture of, yeah, we all love each other. Like these guys are awesome. Love the coach, love the players. But because of that, nobody wants to get down and actually be, as direct as they need to when it comes to correcting mistakes. I think that may be, and I hate to give him credit for it because I'm not a huge fan of, but Peter Bukowski, I thought he nailed it whenever he said, I think the reason everybody likes Bisaccia is because he's like the teacher you had that let you cuss in class and, didn't grade your homework. And it's just like, man, it kind of feels that way, like he's the cool guy. Probably got some good things he's teaching you. You can learn lessons from him. It's not that he's a total dummy. It's just that you need more discipline than that, especially, when you're the youngest team in the league. If you're not the youngest team in the league year after year, you got a room full of 30-year-old men. Well, you probably can hang out and let them cuss in class and not grade their homework. But when you're dealing with 22, 23, 24-year-old men and the majority of your team, you need to grade the homework and maybe tell them not to cuss. Like let's teach them a little bit about, being a decent man and all that, and let them course correct along the way. So I do wonder how this changes sort of the culture in both sides, the offense and the defensive room, and how that translates to the field. Hopefully, all of this amounts to no fourth quarter collapses. That's the goal. I think that's a fair goal to have, right?
I don't think it's asking too much, but we'll see.
It's not a huge ask.
It's not a huge ask. Those big second half, fourth quarter leads. Could you just hold on to a few of those a year? That would, close it out. I don't think it's too much to ask, but 2025 Packers couldn't do it. Maybe the 2026 team will be differently.
In fact, they were historically good at collapsing in the fourth quarter. It's amazing. Oh man. Okay. So coaching stuff aside, that is interesting, the tell that they're giving you with the positions and all that. And then hopefully the rest of it amounts to good things. But yes, we've got some just rippling effects happening here in the receiver market. And I know that there's some opinions in the chat, so I'm going to try to get to those, but, and a good question too. But JSN, leading receiver in the league last year, signs a monster deal, monster extension. I think it was like a 6-year extension, wasn't it? Something like that.
Well, so it was 4. He had 2 years and then they give him an extra 4. So like the numbers are kind of funny. So like the numbers, of course, get reported by Shefty and Rappaport. He's making $42 million. He's the highest paid receiver, blah, blah, blah. Well, he had 2 years on his deal already because they picked up his 5th-year option. So if you look at what he's really making over now 6 years, it's like $34 million. I would take that. That's still pretty good money. But he's not making more than Jamar Chase on average. He's not the highest paid receiver. Like the new contract, yes, he would be, but you got to take the whole 6 years. So still really good, but not quite as good as the initial, reporting.
Guaranteed, man.
It's a lot of dough.
It's a lot of money. And listen, I am biased. I played receiver. The position just speaks to me. Jerry Rice is one of my favorite players of all time. Growing up watching him as a receiver made me want to be a receiver, made me just love the position. I'm biased towards receivers. This is outrageous. This is outrageous, man. The I just and it, I like Watson, right? Like I'd like to assume that the extension is automatic, and I know that the comments in the chat don't all agree with me. That's cool. But what I can't get behind is paying a receiver like a quarterback or a defensive end or even a really good corner, because there's just no evidence to suggest that that guy gets you a Super Bowl or gets you over the hump to a Super Bowl. I mean, case in point is the Bengals, right? Like if receiver was the position that did it, they would be a dynasty. And I know Joe Burrow got hurt and all that. Still, like that's kind of the point of paying those premium positions is when those guys are on the field, your team is better, not when those guys are on the field, plus, you know, some all pros here and some all pros there, and, you know, some really good coaches. Then, you know, like even then, and the Packers had it, right? We had Devontae Adams. We had Devontae Adams with Aaron Rodgers, both in their prime. It was beautiful. 2020, 2021 were just amazing years of football, and it didn't matter. That's why I'm just like, paying the receiver position like this is just, to me, I don't know how you can financially justify it, because you're trying to win games and you only have so much salary cap to go around. Like if you're paying a guy, you know, even if it's 34 a year, right? And I know that just the 4 is effectively 42. Man, you're saying, like, I think, what was it? Rasheed Walker signed for $10 million a year, or 1 year, $10 million, right? That's a starting left tackle.
Not
You just said that JSN is worth 3 to 4 starting left tackles. Now I get it. He's not a premier starting left tackle, but he's a starting left tackle. And like, I'm going to make the argument that left tackle is more important than receiver. Like you got to protect your quarterback. But even like, I'm just like, you got starters that are 5 to 10 million a year on your team. You're telling me JSN is worth 3 or 4 of those guys? Holy crap, man. I don't know. I don't know about that.
So, no, I get what you're saying. And so I think you got to look at it this way. He's one of the best receivers in football, you know, top
absolutely
5,
won't
top
argue
3.
that. Yeah.
So he's different, right? Rasheed Walker, who he's really only getting like 4 million yards. He's nowhere near top of his class, right? Like he's even as good years in Green Bay, he's average, right? And last year he had a bad year. He's not even that. And the league is showing you what they think of him. So it's different. To your point, like it's a lot of money for a receiver. I get it. But I also think receivers are more important than they ever were. But quarterbacks are more important. Edge rushers are more important. Some left tackles, you know, your Trent Williams of the world, like that type of left tackle, yes, it's more important. But then after that, I think you're paying the best guys. Like you're paying the difference makers. And you're not paying every receiver, but a Jackson Smith and Jigma, a Chase, a Jefferson, you got to pay them at the top of the market. And like cornerback, you can look at and say it's more important, but I think cornerback, there's only a few guys that I would pay a ton of, like Patrick Surtain, he's worth it. Sauce Gardner kind of was, and I'm not sure he is. And like, that's a position that fluctuates a lot. And I don't think you need to pay a ton of money, but like, if you have a special dude that's really good year in and year out, pay him. And I think that's where Smith and Jigba falls into. The contract that I think is more of a problem for Watson. Well, not for Watson. It's more of a problem for the Packers wanting to pay Watson. Watson should love it, and his agent should love it. Is the Alec Pierce contract?
The price
because he got $28.5 million. He got $28.5 million or $29 million. Now he was a free agent. Watson's not a free agent yet, so it's open market, and like the Colts kept him. But there was competition for him. Other teams wanted him. The Patriots were in on him, and I think the Commanders were in on him, and whoever else. Like he's a good receiver, but he's not Smith and Jigba. Smith and Jigba just had 1,700 yards, was Offensive Player of the Year. He helped his team to a Super Bowl. Like he was their best player on that offense, arguably the best player on that team that won a Super Bowl. Alec Pierce is not that. He's a good receiver. He can do a lot of things, but he just hit 1,000 yards for the first time. Right now, he's doing it with crappy quarterbacks, so good for him.
Oh man, I mean,
but he's not he's not a bona fide he's not a special receiver. He's not a Jefferson or a Chase or an Njigba or whoever I'm missing here as like those top receivers. He's a good receiver, right? But like not only did they pay him, they had turned around and said, well, we can't keep Michael Pittman now, who's a solid receiver. So we're going to trade Pittman to the Steelers for like a late pick swap, and then the Steelers are going to pay him. And we're going to keep Daniel Jones, but that's a different thing. So like that contract and what they paid for Pierce, that's the problem for the Packers, because Watson's agent should look at that and be like, okay, we want that, or we want something really close to
they'll
that.
get more than Pierce.
Maybe. I mean, Pierce has the durability, and he has the 1,000-yard season that Watson's never had. We can argue, like, I think Watson's the better receiver, but he hasn't been healthy enough to show it. And Pierce has. So like that's the Pierce argument. And Pierce was on the open market. Watson were like not there yet.
Right.
Where he can get on the open. So it's a little bit different. But I think a healthy Watson's better than Pierce. But like that's absolutely what Watson's agent should be looking for. And it comes down to like, are the Packers comfortable paying that? And do you want them to pay that for Christian Watson? Like, I like Watson a lot, and he's not Smith and Jig. Like Smith and Jig was better. He has the numbers. He's had the durability. He's done it in the playoffs. He has a ring. Like, not to knock Watson, but like, so Watson's not getting that. But if you're comparing him to Pierce, he's probably better than Pierce. What's held him back is the durability. Like, can he stay healthy? And then, are you going to pay him and he's going to turn around and get hurt again? Right? Like that, you're taking that risk. You're taking that risk with anyone you pay, but like he has a track record of having injuries. Unfortunately, like you don't know that. And then you pay him that's a ton of money. Like if you're talking 28, 29 million a year for Christian Watson, like I don't know. But you're not going to get him for 20 million a year at this point. And you're probably not going to, maybe 25. Like I can't even see 25, but maybe there's a way they can negotiate it down, and they can use his durability concerns against them and all that stuff. I don't know, but you're not getting him for 15 or 20 million a year. You're paying upper 20s realistically.
Yeah,
that's a lot,
and that's. I'm biased. I like Christian Watson. I think he is good. I think, in fact, I would say he's much better than Pierce, but your point is fair. He's got to be on the field long enough to put the numbers up, to demand the numbers. Now, on the more optimistic side of things, if he goes off this season and he puts up 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns, price just went up. And then you're looking at that and it's like, man, you can't let a guy like that go, can you? Right? We all know the potential. We've seen it. Like when he goes off, he goes off. You get a 1,200 yard, 10 touchdown season out of him in this offense with as many, mouths as there are to feed. Man, that's a special guy. Like, I don't think that at that point, like, you have to find a way to keep him, and the price went up. That's where I'm just like, I'm looking at this going, the extension has to happen yesterday. Like, get it done, because I think, and you're saying it's got to make sense for the team. I trust the team to do that, right? I trust Russ Ball and Goot to put out a deal that's not stupid, right, for them and not going to handicap them. And the reason that I brought in the comparison to Rasheed Walker, what I meant to say is you have quality starters on teams across the league making $5 to $10 million a year. There's certainly more than that, right? But there's a decent number of guys out there that are quality starters that are not making more than that this year. Maybe call it 10 to 15. But still, you're telling me JSN is worth 3 quality starters when you're talking about having to pay 11 guys. You have to have 11 starters, not just one, right? It's not basketball. You can't just have LeBron and you're surround him with some scrubs and you'll be in the finals anyway. Like you gotta have quality guys across the board. So if you're gonna pay one guy and take up 3, take up the money of 3 guys like that, I don't know. I just feel like at that point you'd have to have a case that says, well, if you have the best in the league at this position, you win the Super Bowl, right? Like, and that's why the quarterbacks get paid so much, right? Like the best in the league, usually they're competing for a Super Bowl, they're in the Super Bowl, they're winning Super Bowls. So if you have a great quarterback, pay him whatever it costs, right? Nobody batted an eye with Pat Mahomes and making what he made. And I'm sure he's going to get an extension that's going to just, cross our eyes at some point. But that's when there's data to support that. There's data that shows like, yeah, you have a good quarterback, you have a good shot, or pass rusher, and you can kind of go down the list. There's just not a lot of data that says you got a great receiver. If you have the best receiver in the league, you got a shot. The best receiver in the league is usually at home in the playoffs. And that was one of the things
won a Super Bowl.
Well, yes, but he did not do a whole lot in that Super Bowl. So that's the other thing.
He did a whole lot all season, though.
I get it.
You're not paying him one game.
I get it, but my point is like it's not really even about Njigba as much as it is about the position and where you prioritize your dollars to try to maximize your chance to win a Super Bowl. Like it seems to me like a misplaced priority to say that the receiver position is one that if we invest in, we should win. Like typically it's D-line, it's quarterback, it's O-line, it's the best teams usually have a really great running game, a great quarterback, and a great defense, right? I mean, and I've made the case before, like, you've got the world's record-setting offense back in 2013, Peyton Manning, 55 touchdowns, records on records for everything, and they ran into an absolute buzzsaw of a defense in Seattle and made them look like a JV squad. So you're saying the best offense in the history of the league, the best you've ever seen, was reduced to elementary school BS whenever they ran into a good defense. That's where it's just like, to me, it's like, I can't prioritize my dollars there. It's just, it's tough. It's tough to prioritize your dollars in the receiver position and in like the scoring of the offense when historically that's just not what has made the difference in the defense and the championship teams. And so, I mean, you've got valid points on the other side. I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just like, for me, that's how I feel as far as prioritize. Like, can you justify the Watson deal at this point, whatever it looks like? I don't know, man. And I will be one to say, like, when we were joking around before about Justin Jefferson and him wanting out of Minnesota, I don't know if I want that guy. Like, I don't know if I want that much money in the receiver position taking away from other positions.
Okay, so that's I understand what you're saying, but I'll just say, like, you pay your difference makers, and that's what Smith-Njigba is. Like, he's top of the class. We're not talking about paying any receiver that money. We're talking about playing top of the class. And you can talk about like defense and you want to have pass rushers and all that. How many playoff games did Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, Max Crosby, Trey Hendrickson, TJ Watt, how many games did they win last year? 0. How many championships have they won? 0. And those guys are getting paid a ton of money at the top of the edge rusher class, and deservedly so. You have to pay your difference makers, whether you're winning Super Bowls or not. Like, you can say, well, we're not going to invest that in a guy who's a special player. We're going to go out and pay a bunch of guys $5 to $10 million. Good luck winning, because you're not going to win much. And you can fill out a roster and be like, well, we have our money spread out. That's great and all, but you have to pay your special players a lot of money. That's just what it is. That's what the NFL is. That's what sports, like, your top of the line guys are going to get paid. And that's what they did. Like, yeah, it's a ton of money for a receiver, but He's a really good receiver, and he's a receiver that just showed that you can win with him in the Super Bowl. And he was whatever. I think he was offensive player of the year. He had 1,700 yards. He was damn good all year. And it's not like he had Sam Darnold is a nice quarterback, but he didn't have a Hall of Fame quarterback throwing to him. He didn't have really any other weapons on that team, right? Like, he was the guy. He got all the attention, and he still was incredibly productive.
Cooper Kupp was the leading receiver in the Super Bowl.
In one game. In one game.
Well, he had some pretty good games leading up to the Super Bowl, too.
No, Cooper Kupp is not even close to.
I'm not saying he's close. I'm saying like you're saying he's a one-man squad. He's not one man.
If all Cooper Kupp, right, but like, okay, so Micah Parsons isn't one man and Jordan Love isn't one man. Like, Cooper Kupp is not Cooper Kupp of 5 years ago. If all they had was Cooper Kupp, they would be lucky to score 10 points a game. He's on fumes. He's not that good. So I don't care who the leading receiver in the Super Bowl was. They overmatched the Patriots in every way. You have to do it the entire season and the entire career and what you're projecting him to be as a young receiver coming off his first contract. Like, he's really good. So I'm not saying I would have necessarily given him that contract. I think it's crazy, but the bar has been set at what Chase and Jefferson got. So the question for the Packers is, with Watson, what do you do? Now, you're not going to give him Smith and Jigba money or Chase money or Jefferson money, but do you give him Alec Pierce money? And if you don't, what's your alternative? And if you pay him, what happens to Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks? Because their contracts are coming up too. Like, if you pay Watson, those two guys are probably out the door. And I don't think Wicks is a huge loss. Watson, has been more productive. But they can afford Watson cap-wise, and they're not paying any other receivers. All the other receivers are on rookie contracts, which is kind of crazy, unless you count Sky Moore, who they just signed. But like, he's a return guy, and he's not making much anyway. Like, they can afford to do it financially. It's just a matter of, should they do it, and should they do it in the offseason, right? Like, leading in. So, and if you're not going to do it, then like, what's your alternative? Like, I know they just took Matthew Golden, but I mean, it obviously didn't have a very productive rookie year. You're hoping he turns into a star, but you have no idea what he's going to be. Then you're back to like drafting receivers and trying to find that guy. So maybe that's the right way to do it. Maybe that's what they should do instead of paying Christian Watson whatever it's going to take, 25, 28, 29 million, whatever it may take. But it's an interesting question, besides just, do we pay Watson? Like, it's how it affects the rest of that receiver room too.
Well, right. And as you're talking, I'm kind of thinking about, okay, what's the difference between this and before? Because, like, for example, when we had Devontae Adams, there really wasn't a question for me. It's like, no, whatever it takes, you get Devontae Adams locked up. Like, whatever it takes, get him signed. And then obviously it came down to it, and we don't need to talk about how he exited, but up to that point, there wasn't like this thought that's like, look, that would, I don't know, do you want to pay Devontae Adams that much? No, it was like, just pay him, whatever it is, pay him. I think that's maybe the issue with Christian Watson is we see the potential, but we haven't had that production yet where it's like, oh yeah, like you have to pay that guy. Because I'll sit here, like I've got my position that I made clear about prioritizing the receiver position like that. But I don't know that Seattle's wrong to have given him that deal. Like, to your point, you got to pay him top of the market for sure. I don't argue that. I'm not saying he shouldn't be at the top of the market. And, is Seattle wrong for retaining one of their top difference makers? No. I mean, he's a top difference maker. Like, you got to do it. I would actually probably make the argument that somebody else paying him that much would probably be wrong. But he's already with Seattle. They've already won a Super Bowl. So yeah, that's one of those things where it's like, all right, now he's a cornerstone of the team. There's value in that alone. So yeah, you pay him for that. Again, I can't really say that they're wrong for it. Again, I'm just like, I don't know if I would do that. I think I'd rather spread the assets around a little bit more. And that's where with Christian Watson, he hasn't had that decisive performance where it's like, pay him whatever. But we see it,
That's
and we
the
see the
problem.
leadership ability. We see it's like he's had some games where you're like, oh my goodness, this guy is nuts. Made some incredible catches. So you see it. And that's where I'm like, look, what, like, you have to start weighing how things could go. You get him the extension this year, and then he goes off. Now you got yourself a bargain. You know, you get him locked up like for you're saying in the upper 20s, and then all of a sudden at this time next season we consider him in the same class as JSN, and you're paying JSN 5 to 10 million more a year than you're paying Watson. Now Goot looks like a genius, but just the same, you give him an extension now and he gets injured next season, not so great. So it is a gamble, and you have to play those scenarios out of, you know, what are you going to do? But that's why I think it's tough, like, to watch each of these deals roll in and go, dog, what does it take to re-sign a receiver right now? Because the market is just going bonkers.
It is. And like you mentioned Devontae Adams, he was established. We knew he was the best receiver in football. Like, Christian Watson's not that. We kind of still don't know what he truly can be because he's just had the injuries, right? Like, and even last year, he came back and played really well, but he played half the season because he was coming off the ACL. So it's like you see it, and you see the effect he has on the offense just overall, even when he's not catching passes, the attention that he gets from defenses. You see that, but like it hasn't all been there on the field because of the injury. So it's like, how do you figure out what to pay this guy? And then based on what the market is for receivers right now of his caliber, it's going to be a lot to commit. So like, you want to pay a guy for what they're going to be, not what they are, but it's hard when this situation is just unique, and figuring out that number and how it works. And the Packers, whatever they do, and I think they're going to probably end up, I think they're more likely to sign him than they're not. I don't think it's no doubt about it. Like, Tucker Kraft factors into this too. Tucker Kraft are going to find a way. They're going to get a deal done, but like, that money factors in because it's a pass catcher. I know they're different positions, but you got to factor that in. Kraft are going to figure out a way to pay. Watson, I think, might get difficult. I think they probably want to pay him, but these other contracts they're blowing up the market. And I can't imagine his agent coming in being like, yeah, we don't need as much as what Pierce is getting or some of these other guys. We'll take a little bit less. And no, but the Packers would structure it in a way where they could probably get out of it after 2 years without a ton of dead cap space on it. That's just how they do contracts. But it's just the unknown of not having a full season of production from Watson that you haven't had because of what he's been through health-wise, which is, it sucks. And I really like him as a player. I'm not trying to knock him, but it's just the facts that like he hasn't been healthy enough where you could be like, okay, he finally showed us what he can be as a healthy receiver now. Like, let's just pay him and get it done. Like, you don't know what that is. And then, it factors into your whole makeup of who you're paying and when you're paying. And they do have cap space coming up in it was a little tight this offseason and they had to do some things to make some cap space, but coming up the next 2 years, they do have space. And I think a lot of that they have open is going to go to extensions for guys already on the roster. But like somewhat quiet free agency this year, like next year, they're going to have the ability to go out and get some dudes. Like, they're going to be able to go out and pay next year for some guys. But the Watson contract that's a complicated one. Like, I don't know. It's hard for me to be like, yeah, pay him Alec Pierce money because that's a lot of money.
I think at the end of the negotiation, it's going to be more than Pierce money. So that's why I'm looking at this going, man, get it done now. And it might look like a lot now, but if they have that conviction in him, get it done now. They know. Like, the Packers know. I don't think the Packers need to see a complete season to know what they believe he is, right? And whether that is JSN or whatever they think he is, a 1,200 receiver, a 1,500 receiver, 1,700-yard receiver, whatever it is they think he is, I don't think they need to see more to know that. I think it's really a matter of what more of what you're describing, where it's like, all right, well, let's kind of project the future of all of these things here. oh, by the way, we got a draft coming up, and if certain things fall a certain way, maybe we'll do something different, because there's a certain receiver coming out of North Dakota that doesn't look too different from Christian Watson, and he's just a tad more athletic, just by a hair, I think. So there's that, and you got a guy like that falls to you, all of a sudden, maybe you don't need to think about the extension. You guys are just going to agree to part ways because it makes sense for both of you. Appreciate you for your service, Watson. Go get paid, and do that thing because we already got the next one, and he's basically you, right? So thanks, man. Like I could see that happening, right? So I think you do have to let some cards fall, and there's obviously some folks, and I see some of these comments in the chat where it's like, well, you could trade him now and for max value and kind of hedge your bet and not have to worry about that. Like, I think you're leaving too much on the table if you do that.
You trade him now, who plays receiver for you next year? Like you're hurting your 2026 team. Like I like Matthew Golden, but right now Matthew Golden's just hope. Like it would be if you knew Matthew Golden could be that guy, then yeah, it would make it easier to draw a line in the sand with Watson and be like, here's our number. Okay, you want more than that? It's just not going to happen and move on. But you don't know that Golden can be that guy. You hope he is because he was a first round pick, but you just don't know. And that's the unknown. And like the rest of the receiver room, like I think this ties into it. Like Jaden Reed's a good slot receiver coming off a year where he was hurt most of the year. Like I like Jaden Reed, but how much do you pay Jaden Reed to? And if you pay Watson a lot, that's probably not going to give you the ability to pay Jaden Reed. Like Jaden Reed's not getting Watson money or Pierce money, but he's going to get a decent amount, especially if he has a healthy season in 2026. He's a nice receiver for you.
Well, I think they're both in a similar category, though, because I think Jaden Reed's the same thing. It's like you probably see what he is, but you haven't gotten, this last season, he didn't have a full season. So it's just still kind of like, what's he going to be?
I think you have a better feel for Reed than Watson in a way. Like, I think you've seen what Reed is and what he's going to be. Watson, I think you've seen it, but you just haven't seen enough of it. But I think like what you've seen from Reed is what he is. And he's a good slot receiver. He's not a number one receiver. He's not a, however you want to label. He's a good slot receiver that can do a lot of things and do a lot of damage, but you need guys around them. Like he's not going to be a receiver that carries that room, carries your offense or anything like that. But he's good and definitely, a guy that I hope they can keep around long term, but we'll see how it works out financially. And then Wicks is coming up too. And I like Wicks. I think he had a bounce back year in 2025, from 2024 where he had all the drops, but you still don't see it with him. Like he had a big game on Thanksgiving in Detroit, but like he had that one big game. And other than that, you kind of see certain games where he'll contribute and then other games where he's completely not there. And I think he's a nice number 3, number 4 receiver. And that's what he is. And there's nothing wrong with that, but he's not a guy that you're going to pay a lot of money to. But like you decide to pay Watson, then it's going to be Watson and Golden and hopefully Savion Williams, but the other two are probably going to leave. And then you got to start drafting their replacements, which could even tie into the 2026 draft.
Yeah. And I think they know that. I think that there's a future where you pay both Watson and Reed. And I think Watson gets paid more than Reed. Like just the type of players that they are. Reed's got great upside, but yeah, he's a good slot receiver, which is, number 2 at best, right? He's not a number 1 receiver. He's not your guy that you're going to put all the weight of the offense on. Whereas Watson is that guy, right? And the thing that I think is easy to lose sight of when you're in the offseason is how much the offense changes when Watson is in the game. The first half of last season, the offense, we were not happy. We were frustrated. And I remember talking about it leading up to the games before Watson came back. Like, all right, can they open up the play calling now that Watson's back? Will we see a better offense? And we started to. We did. We started seeing the offense really hit whenever he was in there, and they were able to do certain things that they weren't doing in the first half of the season. That's where I say I think they know what they believe Watson is or isn't. I don't think so. Like, for example, if we're sitting here going, well, yeah, if he's a 1,500-yard receiver next year, then no doubt, man, he's awesome. They already expect whatever that is, right? Like if he's a 1,500-yard receiver next year, they're not surprised by it. They're like, yeah, that's what we thought he was, so that's why we gave him the extension. That's where, for me, I'm wondering what is the impetus with his extension, because it only gets more expensive by the day. Is it a certain player that you're waiting to see what he gets, or is there already maybe something on the table and one side or the other, who knows? There hasn't been a whole lot of chatter about that, but to me, it's interesting because both sides should want to get it done, right? I think the Packers should want to keep Watson at a good rate if they can, and I think Watson should want to be with the Packers, man. I mean, he's got a leadership role in the offense. He's got a rising star quarterback in Jordan Love. I mean, you got to love I think it seems like he loves his coach. I don't know. Maybe we've talked a lot of bad things about Matt LaFleur and all that. I don't know how he feels about his coaches, but again, it seems like he would want to stay in Green Bay. A lot of good things going on for a receiver in Green Bay right now. So the fact that it hasn't happened yet is sort of where I start going, what are we waiting on, guys?
I think they're probably had initial talks to kind of get an idea of like ballpark ranges and stuff like that. It's going to take time. Like, I don't expect anything before the draft. I don't really expect anything until maybe right around training camp or in training camp if they get something done. But I would think that the talks are already happening. And to your point, like, if you don't get it done and he comes out and he has a healthy year and he puts up big numbers and whatever, the price is only going to go up. And then the number gets even higher. And so, yeah, it's better for the Packers to get it done earlier if they really want to commit to him. But the risk is you haven't seen it enough on the field. And I think he just had his best season once he came back in 2025. Like, I think that was his most complete season as a receiver. Overall, I really liked what he obviously added to the offense, but like blocking wise, and it seemed like he wasn't just a deep ball guy. Like, he was doing other things too. And we knew he could do that, but like, we saw it more. So I think it was his best season, but you have the injury history where you haven't seen a complete season. Now, if you get that in 2026 and you haven't paid him, the numbers are going to be through the roof. Like, you're going to be inching closer to Smith and Jigba numbers just because he's going into the free agency, and like open market, other teams are going to pay. Like, naturally, those numbers are going to go up. So yeah, the better time to do it is now, before the season. But it's a real. That one's a tough one. Tucker Kraft's a no-brainer. I think just about every Packer fan would say, yeah, pay Tucker Kraft. I don't care what the numbers are, just get it done. Pay him, right? With Watson, it's complicated, and I understand both sides of it. And I really like him as a player, but it's just I'm scared off by the injury history. And can you pay a guy like that? And will he stay healthy after the injuries? We don't know.
Yeah, and that, at least you end the season on the right note. He didn't end the season injured. And you're saying he had his best season. He did. He had an 82.7 PFF grade this season. That's pretty dang good. Pretty dang good. Best of the receivers. So, and by a lot, the next best graded receiver was actually Matthew Golden with a 70.5. So, and again, PFF is not the end all be all, but sometimes it's good to illustrate a point. But either way, I think if you just watched the games, Christian Watson very easily had his best season. I don't need to look at the stats. Yeah. I saw it, right? He was there consistently once he was back from the injury. He had a great presence. Even, we thought he was going to get injured that one against the Broncos. He ends up being able to come back. So, he made some great plays. Yeah, there were some mistakes. He had a couple drops that were important. But I thought he had a great season. For the time that he was on the field, and he ended it in a way that he can build on it. You go into the offseason, you heal up even more, stronger, faster, all that. He's not like he's an old guy, right? I think I don't even know how old he is. He's in his mid-20s. So, this is a guy who should be coming into his prime. He's about 27 years old, 26. He's about to turn 27.
the risk too you take if like you don't sign him and you let him walk, and he has a big year, you let him walk, you don't pay him. You're going to be looking for the next Christian Watson, and there ain't many like him with his size and his speed and his ability. Like it's hard to find.
It is, and it's not just the athletic profile, but what's going on between the ears. He gets a lot of compliments for his leadership abilities and his football intelligence. So
absolutely,
that full package is not something that's easy to find. And if they believe they have it, get the extension done, man. Get it done yesterday. And all right, so I want to buzz through a few of these comments because I know you guys have been going back and forth, and I like some of these points. But we also still need to talk linebackers. Might just put a pin in safeties because the Packers aren't going to draft a safety anyway. But let's get it going early because I know our showers, you got to chime in on Watson. I know it. Since I didn't like the idea of paying him before this contract, absolutely forget it now. Injury history, real production, hard pass unless it is very, very, very team-friendly structure. And yeah, okay, yeah. Well, I want it to be team-friendly for sure, and I think that the team will make it team-friendly. I think you fairly articulated the points that we made, but it just depends on what you think he will do from here. I think is maybe where some of us differ. Our buddy Matthew Tan says, thanks, Miles and Tim, for wishing me a happy birthday. Yeah, happy birthday coming up this week. Believe it's on Wednesday, if I remember correctly. But appreciate you joining us every week, Matthew. You're awesome, man. And go, Pack, go, certainly. Yeah, and then we had, I know, another kind of maybe a counter perspective here on Watson pop up. There he is. Greg Taylor says, I think of Matt. If Matt gave Watson the targets, he would be in the top 12. And if the Packers agree, they already agree. You know what I mean? Like if the Packers think that that's what he could be, I don't think they're waiting for a full season or a bunch of targets. I think that they agree on that, and that's how they think of him now. And maybe it's not even top 12. It might be top 10. But yeah, that's where it gets tricky. Watson knows that too, right? Like these guys aren't dumb. Like they can see what goes on. And I don't think Watson is necessarily on the side of the fans in this one. I think he's a little bit more on the side of LaFleur, and that it really comes down to the game plan. Who's in the progression, who's open, who is the defense taking away, and who are we going to go and hit instead? Sometimes it's going to be the defense taken away from Watson, and you're going to have to feed Kraft. Sometimes you're going to take away Kraft, and you got to feed Watson or Reed. I mean, there's going to be different ways for the offense to adapt to what the defense takes away. And I think because of that, Watson knows he's not going to get the targets that a Jefferson or a Chase get. And if he did, could he be, more of a stat machine? Yes. But at the end of the day, where does he believe he's got the best chance to win football games and championships? And that's what it's going to come down to. It's not really for him. I don't think it's going to be, well, I could be a 1,700-yard receiver in this offense if you guys would just feed me. I just don't get that attitude from him.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it too over the years. Like he's just not like a receiver, and maybe it's the offense, but I don't think he's a receiver that's a guy that's going to catch like 100 balls every year, like a high volume guy. But he does other things, like just his speed alone opens up routes and things underneath for other guys, or his blocking and everything. It's just his all around game is a little different. Like he's not going to ever be a super high volume guy. And yeah, to the Greg's point there, yeah, they could definitely feature him more and get him the ball more. They absolutely should. But like, this isn't going to go back to like when Devontae was here in LaFleur's offense, because that was Rodgers feeding Devontae, because that's the guy he trusted and he wanted to get to him. And he was right because it was Devontae, but like sometimes too, there were other guys you could have went to that were open, right? There were other things you could have done instead of feeding him the ball at times. And I don't think LaFleur's offense is probably ever going to be like, let's feature one guy and just feed him the ball over and over and over again. Like he wants to get other people involved, because it makes it tougher for our defense to know what's coming, right? And when you have Tucker Kraft and you have Jaden Reed and what you hope is a really strong, other receiver in Matthew Golden, you have a running game, like you do want to spread it around. But yeah, to the point was he should get more targets and he should get the ball more. Absolutely. But I also think LaFleur and the front office know what Watson is, and they've already been clear kind of in that over the years that they really like him. They know what kind of receiver is. So regardless of what his targets are or his stats, like they really like him. And, yes, I agree. They need to get him the ball more, but I don't think he'll ever be like a super high volume receiver. It's not the way the offense functions.
No. And that's not a priority for every receiver. Some receivers it's like, hey, look, I got to get 20 targets a game, whatever. Or my goal is to do 2,000 yards in a season. Fine. Like that's fine. There's some guys that operate that way, and there's some offenses that need that guy. And this offense just doesn't work that way. I accept that, right? I think some fans get pissed about that, but I accept that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In fact, I think that was a good way to combat the Patriots. Back in the day, the Patriots, what they did the best was take away your best weapon, right? And I know LaFleur really liked to learn from Belichick. He really liked to learn from, that Patriot way. That was you have to have options. Like if somebody takes away your best weapon, who are you going to go to next? And in an offense like this, that's a tough day for a defense. When they take away Kraft and then you got Watson, or they take away somehow Kraft and Watson, and then you got Reed and Wicks and Josh Jacobs, and Matthew Golden. I mean, that's a lot to deal with. Those are all very, very capable players once you've taken away those top couple guys. So you want that. You do want that versatility, because if you're a one-trick pony and the defense takes that away, it's an ugly day after that, man. There's nowhere to go. And that's just not fun football to watch. So I don't think that matters as much to the receiver. I don't think that matters as much to Watson as maybe like a respectful pay, respectful compensation, right? I don't think he's justified that top 5 money is kind of what we're looking at with JSN and crew, or even maybe top 10 money. But where does he like his performance to this point? Where does that land him in the market? And is he okay with that? He may be saying, look, let me play this season and let me show you a full season, and let's negotiate at the end of this season. Now that's a bet on himself, right? Because let's say maybe he could get between 25 and 30 million a year right now. And he goes off and does like what we're talking about, where he puts up 1,500 yards and 10 plus touchdowns. All of a sudden, he's made like a $10 million bet on himself. He's probably looking at 35 at that point. But, that's the classic kind of, take what you can get, or take what you might get if you improve. A lot of college students making that same business decision. It doesn't always work out very well. So we just don't know where that negotiation lies. But, somebody who likes Watson and also likes, responsible financials, I'm rooting for them to get this thing done ASAP so that it costs minimal. But not to be minimal. Watson disrespectful. Well, I mean, like minimal in relative terms.
I got you.
Relative terms, of course.
I would love to keep him, but that's a lot of money to commit. And I think it's going to be Alec Pierce neighborhood right now. And if they don't get him signed and he bets on himself, has a big year, it's going to blow past Alec Pierce. So it's a lot of money. And I'll just put out, because I'm seeing like comments about the offense and stuff like that. I think they had one game last year with Kraft and Watson both in the lineup and healthy. I believe it was one, maybe it was two. And then Kraft tore his ACL. And I mean, even Watson was coming off an ACL, so he wasn't full go. Mm-hmm. And Reed was out. And like, we never even saw their full offense last year with all the injuries and the guys in and out of the lineup. So I'll just point that out. The Watson contract is fascinating. And if they want to do it, they better get done soon.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I see this comment from Greg Taylor 5657. The question is, will MLF call the plays for Watson to have 1,500 yards? Yeah, I get. But to your point there, Tim, and this is a big if in today's NFL, but if you get a full season of a healthy Jordan Love, a healthy Christian Watson, a healthy Tucker Kraft, and a serviceable offensive line, that is a bad day for defenses in the NFL. Bad day for defenses in the NFL. That is going to be hell. And I don't know, you might break records with that offense.
The big key that you mentioned there that we haven't even touched on is the offensive line.
Serviceable offensive line.
That's the biggest key to all their production on offense is the offensive line. More than Watson, more than Kraft, more than whoever. It's the offensive line. And yeah, well, we're going to have a lot to say about the offensive line going forward. But yeah, it all ties together. And yeah, well, the Fuller call the plays to get Watson 1,500 yards. I don't think he's going to be featured, but he's not going to be featured to the point that a Smith and Jigba or a Jefferson are featured or Jamar Chase. Like it's different. And he could still have a big year and not put up 1,500 yards, but they're going to want to spread it around, and Tucker Kraft should get his yards, right? And Jaden Reed, and we want to see Golden take a huge jump in year 2, and they want to run the ball with you. Like there's a lot of mouths to feed, and yeah, I don't know if he's getting 1,500 yards. I doubt that, but I think he can have a really good year, even with him not getting a huge target share, just because that's not how the offense functions. But yeah, to your what you mentioned there, it depends on the offensive line, most of this.
Yeah, no, it really does. And that's why earlier in the conversation I was talking about left tackle. It's like, look, I would argue left tackle is more important than receiver, because if you don't have a good left tackle, it doesn't matter how good the receiver is, you're not going to have time to get him the ball. And that's where you got to be able to allocate resources responsibly. That's how I'm looking at the Bengals going, yeesh, you can't keep your quarterback healthy, but you got $200 million receivers. Maybe
their defense is a dumpster fire. Their defense is terrible too. Like that, and it's the Bengals, and it's just the Bengals.
Oh
right? Like,
man, but that's sort of like
But I get like
end of what I'm trying to illustrate. You know what I mean?
I agree with you though. Like I wouldn't pay both Chase and Higgins. Like no way am I paying the money that they paid both of those guys. One of them, okay, like Chase, fine, but not Higgins too. Like I wouldn't do it. It makes no sense. But
look, you've been that good at scouting receivers. Bet on yourself to find another Higgins. You know what I mean? There's good receivers coming out every year. Like, to me, paying a guy like that, like Chase, look, that guy is just like, I don't want to use generational talent. Let's try to reserve that, but he could be, right? Like one of the best. He's got the rookie receiving record, right? Because Jefferson got it, and didn't he come along and one up him?
Maybe I don't know. Yeah,
I think that's what it was. Like one after
he's
the other.
Special.
Yes, he's a special guy. You got to pay Chase, special guy. But Higgins is one like he's good. But if you're good at what you do, find another one. You know what I mean? The Packers have been good at that, right? That's why we're having the discussion we're having, because you just lost Dobbs, and we're not even talking about that as being a loss. We're still calling this a crowded room. And so, you got Watson, you got Reed, you got Wicks, Savion, Golden. The Packers are saying, look, we'll never be in the situation where we got to pay a receiver $200 million, because we've got a carousel, man. We got just a complete farm system of these guys rolling through, and we're adding to that every year. Maybe, hopefully not this year. Maybe they can chill out and let this group sort some things out. But the point being is you shouldn't be in a position where you should have to pay your receiver $200 million. That's crazy business. All right. We've gone long on this conversation, man. I didn't think that we'd actually be able to talk about Watson the whole time. I will do this, because if we dip into the linebackers right now, we'll be here until midnight.
We'll table it to next week.
Let's table linebackers and safeties. Salute to Bob Harlan real quick. Respect. Yes. They had a memorial up there at Lambeau today. Some neat interviews, or I guess speeches, just conversations that happened there.
Yeah. And then one thing, I know we're getting late, but I got to point out, like, in the long history of the Packers, he is one of the most important people in the history of that franchise.
100%.
Players, executives, coaches, however, he is among the handful of most important people in the history of that organization. Underrated because he was just, as far as his importance, because he didn't want the spotlight. Like the person that he was, he didn't seek it out. He didn't seek out the attention for himself. Just an incredible, he always called himself a caretaker, right? He was just a caretaker. It wasn't about him. It was about the Packers and Green Bay. And just an incredible person, incredibly important to that team and what Lambeau Field is. You know, he was the one that got the renovations done, what the franchise has been. And like, we're on here and we debate it every week, and people in our comments are debating about the Packers and why can't they get to the Super Bowl and why are they this and that. Like when Bob Harlan came in and turned it around, right, in 1992 when it really started to shift, but he came in a little bit before that. Like he's the reason why they've had sustained success, right? Like go back and look at what they were in the 70s and 80s before he was the president and CEO. They were a mess. On the field and off the field. It was bad. And so we've been spoiled, and we're spoiled because of how good Bob Harlan made it. And like he brought in Ron Wolf, and that Ron Wolf chain has gone to Ted and now to Brian, and it's continued on. And Bob Harlan and Mark Murphy to Ed Policy, and they've kept so much of it in place. And we can complain about, well, they only won 2 Super Bowls. Well, look how good of a franchise and how consistent they've been. And that's all because of what Bob Harlan did and started, right? Like the general managers, the coaches that were brought in, the quarterbacks, it all ties back to Bob Harlan and what he established and how he wanted the Packers to be run, and keep the board of directors out of it and let the football people make the football decisions. And he was there to support them, and he didn't make those decisions. And if they needed his support, they needed anything, he was there to give it to them, but he wasn't there to tell them who to draft in the second round or who to sign in free agency or who to play that week. He stayed out of it. And he was all about the Packers. And, and again, in the history of that franchise, he is one of the most important people that they've ever had, up there with Curly Lambeau and Lombardi and all the early, people that established the Packers as a team and kept them running for so long. Like Bob Harlan deserves to be in that class. And I think it's great they're finally going to put his name up in Lambeau Field on the facade. It was long overdue. But yeah, salute to him. It's a big loss and it's a shame. But they continue to kind of carry on his legacy because they continue to run the team very similar to how he ran it for all those years. And, that's why that's why we have a team to talk about that is in Green Bay, is because of Bob Harlan.
No doubt. No doubt about it. I echo everything you said, man. I think you could put a statue out in front of Lambeau of that guy. Yeah, I don't think you could say enough about Bob Harlan. I definitely encourage everybody to go check out some of the conversations and the stories and the speeches from the memorial today at Lambeau. Is pretty cool. His son, it's what's his son's first name? It's Kevin Harlan.
Kevin
was the MC, and he was, he's up there between, broadcasting March Madness games. So just real neat. McCarthy was there. Ron Wolf was there. Ron Wolf had some swag for an old dude, man. He's up there just like chilling back. He's got like a nice jacket on, man. Looking good. I was really impressed.
Ron friggin' Wolf, man.
Looking good, man. He looks like he could still like step into the front office and just call the shots. Hopefully he drops in every now and then, just like reminds him like, hey, don't get out of line. Stick to the way. But anyway, definitely encourage everybody to go check those out. Very cool, very appropriate memorial for Bob Harlan. And yeah, I don't think you can overstate the importance of that guy to the Green Bay Packers and who they are now, and absolutely put him up there with the Curly Lambos of the world. You can't put his name on a trophy, so I don't know if we could, can't put him up there with Lombardi, but if you could put his name on the side of the stadium somehow, like Lambeau Field at Bob Harlan Stadium, I don't know, because outside of that, we're not changing naming rights, Ed Policy. Just to be clear, we're not negotiating that at all. But you want to put Bob Harlan's name up there? That's fine. That's totally fine. We could make room in our hearts for that one. Yeah, so I thought that was good. Salute to Bob Harlan. And
Absolutely.
again, check that out, guys, but don't don't sleep on who that guy is. If you aren't familiar with what Bob Harlan did for the team, definitely check it out. Very, very cool individual.
If you're a Packers fan, and if you're listening to this, then you owe a lot as a Packer fan to Bob Harlan.
100% for sure. So yeah, so there we are with that. And then again, we're not going to go ahead and do the linebackers and safeties prospects for the draft tonight. I do apologize if you were just waiting on the edge of your seat the entire time we were talking about receiver extensions, and now we have let you down and deflated you, and you've stayed up late past your bedtime, and you're just probably pissed at us now. But I will say, as a teaser, I am going to start the Jacob Rodriguez fan club. I don't care where you have to draft him. He needs to be a Green Bay Packer. So that's what comes out of my whole synopsis of this linebacker class. It's a very impressive linebacker class, an impressive safety class too, but I don't see the Packers taking a safety, at least in the early rounds. But we will go through all of those next week. As I mentioned, there's a pretty decent list of linebackers here. Like, we could probably spend like a fair amount of time talking about these different linebackers in this class. Class goes deep. A lot of athletes. I think today, Harold Perkins Jr. at LSU ran like a 4.38. So that'll probably have his stock up. But yeah, lots to talk about from the linebacker crew. We'll buzz through who the safeties are. You guys probably are aware of a lot of the safeties. But again, we're probably not talking about them until day 3. So stay tuned for next week. We will do it. I promise. I just didn't think that we would have this explosive JSN extension and then all of these different hairs to split with Christian Watson and his extensions. But we solved all the problems, so here we are. And you guys are amazing. Great conversation in the chat tonight. Always have a lot of fun with you guys when you're flying through there with a little debate, a little back and forth, but usually some really high football IQ stuff. I don't know about the rest of your IQ. You guys might be dummies in the real world with high football IQ. I don't know about that. I don't know. All I know is what you show me in the comments, guys. I don't know. But I assume you're all pretty sharp individuals, although you are listening to us at almost 11 o'clock on a Monday night. So maybe you're not the brightest bulbs in the shed. I don't know.
Oh my God.
But I do love you guys. I appreciate you being here with us this late and listening this late. You've been here for this late, an hour into this thing. You guys are too much. And, you're just great football fans, great Packer fans. So appreciate you. And make sure you come back next week so we can talk about draft stuff like we were supposed to talk about tonight. We let you down. I'm sorry. But if you did have fun with us tonight, go ahead and spike that like button for us. Jump on over to the YouTube channel. Type in Packers Talk Network and hit that subscribe button for us. It's a huge favor. Really makes a big difference every time somebody hits that button. And we want to hang out with you guys again next week. Go through all the stuff. Maybe we'll have some more Packers stuff, some extensions, something that'll happen. And you know what will happen tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. So we'll have to wait a whole week before we can talk about it. But that's fine. Something cool will happen. So just know that. And until then, folks, as always, go Pack.